Hey folks, Mel the Terrain Tutor back in the studio and back with another Let's Make tutorial for you. And in this Let's Make, we're starting our Dark Age series and we're going to be making this amazing henge. Now, we're going to be covering working with expanded foam, working with high density foam, covering tips and tricks to texture it, to get realistic rock colours, covering wet washes, which is posh washing. Yeah, and obviously the flocking, the foliaging and all that sort of stuff on top. So if you're interested in learning how to make this henge, yeah, then, shall we? Let's get cracked on. Come on. So as with all good terrain, we're going to start off with the base. And for the base, I'm using my standard EPVC material. Brand name is Palite. Yeah. Expanded PVC foam board, yeah, you get it free from scraps from sign printers. Now obviously if you look at it, I've already drawn out the shape of our standing circle. Yeah, I've got a circle in the middle, yeah, which is going to be our main high density standing foam, and then what I've done is I've drawn a circle around the outside and I've sectioned it off into 4 pieces. These are going to be our scatter pieces, okay, so we'll be able to lay our middle point down in the middle and then lay these out around the side. Yeah, rather than making one big large thing, it's going to be easy to store, it's a little bit more modular, it's a little bit easier to handle as well. Now obviously I've got my material, the next thing I need to do is to start cutting it out and beveling it up. So first off, we'll start cutting it out. Remember, as you cut it out, lots of multiple strokes are better than one deep one when working with this stuff. Go easy, watch your fingers and don't force any cuts. Get some nice pieces out of it and then you're ready for beveling. For the beveling, just take a little bit off the edges and smooth it out. Remember, we'll go in with a little bit of sandpaper afterwards to really smooth this out, so we're just removing the bulk at this stage. So that's our bases carved, and the astute of you watching this video will notice my top has changed. Yes, I've reached that point where I've dirtied that many fleeces and jumpers and pullovers that Kerry went out and bought me some studio wear. So you'll be seeing this as the official top of videos in the future. That'll stop the constant changes between blue, burgundy and green, and hopefully I won't get told off anymore for getting acrylic paint all over my tops. This one I'm allowed to. So anyway, let's crack on, guys. Right, if we come down, yeah, you can see that we've done our modular bases. They are all beveled, yeah, and they're looking good. And it's time to start the actual henge. Now, for the henge, we're going to be using 2 different types of polystyrene. Yeah, for the main center piece, we're going to be using high density polystyrene. But for the main henges and the standing stones with the toppling stones, we're going to be using this stuff. Now this is expanded polystyrene. This is Jab Light from B&Q. Yeah, it's my favorite stuff. It's black, it works well for me, and it's quite dense. Okay, so let's set this up for cutting. Now for my standing stones, I'm going to be cutting this, and I'm going to be cutting this into 1.5 inch wide strips. Okay, now the key trick with this and cutting expanded polystyrene is to use a low angle of attack. Don't come into it nice and high, come into it nice and low and gradually slice through the piece. That's the way you avoid getting all the little bobbles and ripping it. If you come in too high, yeah, there's too much drag on it and you will rip through it and you'll end up ruining your polystyrene ready for for when you actually do your standing stones. So, one last one, and we should have, almost, there we go, yeah, we should have a really nice clean cut there, and that's perfect for what we need to do. So my next job is I need to crack on. I need to do a few of these rows, so we've got enough for 1, 2, 3 times 4, 12 standing stones. Well, 8 standing stones and 4 toppers. Cracking on time. So that's all my strips cut out, and it's time to cut them into sections ready for our henge. And if you look, what I've done is I've cut each strip into 2 3-inch pieces and 1 4.5 inch piece. Remember, the measurements are down to you, get a feel for it. These are quite big henges, but I've been to Stonehenge and they are quite big rocks, so it feels right for me. Go what feels right for you. Do a test cut first, get a general assembly like this one. Yeah, so you can get an idea of how big they are around your models. And once you've got your final dimensions, then mass produce your stones for your henge. Okay, so I need to work through the rest of these, get these cut out, and then we'll come back and we'll start shaping them and that sort of stuff. So all our pieces are cut, and there's a little bit of work to do on them before we go to the construction stage. They're a little bit rough at the minute and they need a bit of a sanding. Now for sanding, yeah, what I'm using is a bit of sandpaper wrapped around a sanding block. It's 150 grit, okay, which is a really fine sandpaper. You want to use fine sandpaper with this stuff, okay? If you use the more grittier type, the low count, it's a bit too abrasive and it rips the bobbles out, okay? Whereas with a fine sandpaper, it just sands them and it's perfect. Now when it comes to sanding, what the key points are is you want to get rid of any bobbles that have survived the cutting process, okay? You want to take away these edges a little as well. Remember, we're not trying to really change it from a block, yeah, because that's what they had in the henges, yeah, carved blocks. But we are trying to make it a little less uniform and a little less squared away, yeah. So it's just a simple matter of coming along and gently dragging it over until we start to get something a little bit more carved, yeah, compared from that to that. So as you can see, a little bit better. Now I am pulling bits out, and there are bits that are obviously exposed and that sort of stuff. We'll deal with those at the filler stage. I could do with bringing that camera a bit closer, couldn't I? I'll have a look at it in a second. Right, so my next job, crack on with sanding these down. I'm going to do all around the edges on the long sides. These are the long pieces, so I'm going to have to do across the top and all around it. With these, the shorter pieces, I'm just going to do the sides and a little bit at the top. I want to leave the bottom. The bottom needs to have a lovely flat bottom on so we can get it stick down. And I do like a little flat bottom. Right, cracking on time. So we've completed our standing, and if we take a look, yeah, our stones have come out quite nice. Yeah, we've smoothed off all the edges and made them a little bit more, I'm not going to say organic because they're stones, but they don't look like, you know, obelisks now. You know, no 2001 here. Yeah, a little bit more rounded on the edges. Now I have ripped bits out, and don't worry, that will go towards helping it make it look a lot better and that sort of stuff in the future with regards to the overall shape and stuff like that once we've done our texturing. But before we get to texturing, we've got to fix them down. Now for fixing them down, yeah, I'm using my bog standard PVA. You could use other glues, you could use hot glue with it being polystyrene, but it would have to be on a low temperature. Probably the best glue to use for something like this is Mod Podge because it's a gel glue, and so it'll hold a little bit better. PVA isn't the best thing to be gluing to EPVC, but it does work enough for us to do, so we're going to do it. And to do it dead simple, I'm just going to put a bit of white glue, PVA, on the bottom of that one, okay, and give it a little wiggle. Same on that one. Yeah, and then I'm just going to put a blob across the top of each. Yes, the women are laughing in the corridor if you can hear them. Oh, the joys of being in a communal studio. Right, yeah, and then all I want to do is I want to get this piece and then just wiggle these until they're roughly right. I need enough space either side so they're uniform and they're roughly lined up. Yeah, that's one of the benefits of PVA. Yeah, it's got a bit of wiggle. Okay, next job is we get our top column and we just place it on the top and give that another little wiggle, make sure we're happy with how it's laid out. And then once we are, yeah, you don't need to do this, but it helps. Okay, pins, yeah, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw one in the side, either side, just like that, just to watch colour, just to help keep them in place while they're gluing. I'm not really expecting them to move, I'm not going to be touching them, but it just helps if they get knocked, do you know what I mean? Right, I'm going to crack on with these and then I'm going to leave them to dry. Okay, now while they're drying, it means a perfect time for us to work on on our centerpiece, our HD foam bit. So I'll get these done and we'll come back with the HD foam in a second. So while those are drying, it's time to get stuck into our main centre bit. And for that, I want a bit of an obelisk. And I'm doing it out of HD foam. Now, I could have done it out of the expanded polystyrene stuff. It's just, this is an opportunity for me to show you the techniques with H foam and doing rocks and stuff like that. So I might as well do it and share the information with you. Okay, so we've got our HD foam. And I've cut it out into a rough block of probably about 2.5 inches by 2 inches by, I'm probably going to say, probably about 4 inches to be truthful. Okay, and it's a nice block with a lovely flat bottom. We want to preserve that flat bottom. Now when it comes to actually cutting it out, what I want to do is I want to start and get the rough shape first. What you can do is you can get a pen, and on each of the different aspects, yeah, you can draw your rough line of what you want, what shape you want. Yeah, and then you can cut round it. I generally don't do that. The reason being is that I tend to work from my head anyway, you know, and I always lose track of these sort of things. Now when it comes to cutting, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get a rough shape of it. So we're going to take off the corners, yeah, and with HD foam it cuts really nice and clean. Just remember to make sure you've got a long sharp blade, and of course watch your fingers. So we come in, corners off. Once we've got the corners off, it's time to start shaping it. And what I'm going to be doing is basically taking a bit off and beveling it down so it's got a peak at the top, comes down to the main point of the body, then sort of flattens off. Yeah, so yeah, we'll start carving these down, take these down because I want a point at the top. Remember, go little and light with this, yeah? Little cuts first because you can always come in afterwards, yeah, if you've gone a bit too... Well, let's just say if you do little cuts, then if you do big cuts, it's hard to sort of rectify mistakes with big cuts. While you're getting used to it, if you do little cuts, you can step it by step, if you know what I mean, before you make any drastic changes. Yeah, so we'll come down here, start to change that, and get this point down there. And as you can see, I am literally just taking bits off it. Yeah. Another aspect of doing the little by little bit is, what it does is it gives you a more faceted rock. And what I mean by that is that if I was to do a couple of clean cuts and get it done, it'd be very angular. Yeah, by coming in and doing lots and lots of little cuts, you get far more like rock facets, which is more interesting as a piece to look at. Yeah. So as you can see, it's slowly coming together. Yeah, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shape off the top. Yeah, getting there. And then I'm going to shape off the bottom. Just by taking a little bit off it, just to make it look like it's been planted into the ground. Yeah, and as you can see, it's already coming together. Yeah, so a little bit more work, a few more little finesse cuts just to finish it off, but we've got the bulk of it done. Once we've got it finished off, we'll carry on with the next bits. So we've continued our cutting and we've got it all done now. If you take a quick look, yeah, you can see lots of little cuts along the ridge lines to make it look a lot more rocky. Okay, now a little bit of sandpaper. I'm not using the sandpaper to make it completely smooth. I'm using the sandpaper just over the ridge lines, just to take off any bobbles that have come up from the cut. I still want those ridge lines because that's what helps makes it look like a rock. Yeah. And so there we have it. Next up, we want to give this surface a bit more texture. Okay, now there's a couple of ways of doing that. We can make a texture paste and apply it. That's what we'll be doing with the expanded stuff. But because this is high density, it can actually take a texture which the expanded stuff can't. And so we're going to texture it. Now you can use lots of different ways of texturing this stuff. One of my common ways is a big ball of crunched up aluminium foil. That textures really well. But I wanted to show you very quickly how to use a rock to get a rock texture. Now I've got a little bit of slate here. Yeah, it's quite polished because I've done this so much with it. I've actually polished the slate. Yeah, but it is just a simple matter of coming in and with your slate pressing into it. Yeah, I'm using the edge of the slate. Yeah, because that's where I can apply the most pressure in the smallest areas. And if I just very quickly just do a little bit here, I'm looking at going over those ridge lines. Yeah, I need to make sure I move the slate round as I use it, because that will give me alternative different sort of angles and shapes on it. But if I bring it up very quickly, yeah, you can already see how that's texturing up compared to the untextured bit. And if I just come along, there you go, you see what I'm doing with it. So I'm going to finish texturing this up. Once it's textured up, all I need to do, drop a bit of PVA on the bottom of there, slap it down onto my base, and we're ready to leave this and the others to dry. Come back in tomorrow to texture them up. So better get cracked on with this and that. So everything's dry and it's time to remove the pins. But before we do, and we go quickly down, yeah, slight bit of a problem. 4 pieces. Doesn't look much like a henge, does it? Yeah? My bad. Right, easy fix. I made another. Yeah, so dead simple. I'd gone in and had sectioned, and I should have remembered that 4s will make it look like a square. So all I've done is I copied the base out onto another piece. I used the rough blocks as a guide, and I made another piece. And so if you give me a second, and there we go. The difference as another single piece makes. All sorted. Whilst almost. There's also another little thing we need to address. Now, with regards to the, with regards to the obelisk, yeah, that is, shall we say, dedicated to the Roman god Uranus? Okay, yes, got a bit of a problem. Our base is a lot bigger than our actual monolith. And what you want with bases is you want bases to essentially frame the, frame the piece. Okay, so you only want a little bit of base sticking out the side. This has got far too much base, but it's an easy fix. All I'm going to do is, I've got some little rocks here, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to glue them round. Yeah? Now, to glue them round, I'm going to use some hot glue. I could use PVA, I could use a gel super glue. Hot glue is just basically going to let me get them glued and get cracked on with this project. Okay, but you can use PVA. But I'm going to basically fill the base with these rocks. Okay, and that will help break up the flatness of the base and let the feature sort of soak in the base, if you know what I mean. It'll frame it properly again, it'll look right. So I'm going to get cracked on with that, and I'll come back when that's done. So guys, got my stones stuck on, and as you can see, it's looking slightly better. It's filled up that space, which is what we were aiming to do. What you don't want is a lot of blank space on your base, do you? Now it's time to start texturing things up, and when it comes to texturing these sort of things up, what I'd normally do is I would use my bog standard filler, Dial from B&Q. The problem is, what little was left in it has pretty much dried up. Now it gives me an opportunity, because I don't have any more in the studio and I need to nip to the B&Q store to go get some more. But before I do, yeah, I've actually got this. Now this is Artex. It's a wall and ceiling stucco for you guys across the pond. And I've never used this for texturing these up before, or texturing anything up. I'm still playing with it, but it's an opportunity to have a play. And I figure by the time I've done all 5, I should have an angle on how it gets nailed down. Now, I am just going to use a brush, yeah, hog's-hair brush, just to apply it and just see how it goes. And we'll see what it comes out with. Like I say, never applied this before, so I'm going to have a play, apply this on a couple of pieces, get a feel for it, yeah, and then as I've got a feel for it, I'll come back and show you exactly how I'm doing it on the last couple, okay? Cracking on time. So I've been having a play, and I think I've nailed it with this Artex stuff. It is very much like filler, but filler has more of a volume, so it's really good at building up surfaces. This is what's got a lot more wetter, but I typically thin my filler down anyway, so it's very much the same. And I've managed to get these sort of results with it, yeah? And so I'm quite happy with that. Right, let me take you through how I'm doing it. Now this will apply whether it's filler or whether it's Artex wool stucco. First thing I'm doing, is I'm getting a good blob, and main points I want to work on are inside and get the transition lines, these points here, where it meets, okay? Yeah, that's just going to help it bond. Now, when I do this, what I typically do is I get it into those points, and then I spread it around, around the actual inside, okay, of the piece first. I always spread things around the inside of the piece first because it just makes it easier when doing the outside. Yeah, if you've got to do the outside first, then come in and do the inside, it gets a little bit messy. So, yeah, I'm just going to spread this round, get an even coating across all of this, yeah? So just get it on. I'm pushing the bulk of it, when I put it on, into any large gaps to sort of help fill those, and then all the extra, I'm just spreading out around the pieces. So I'll get this done. Quick swish, and then we'll be back once I've got this done. Now, I've got it all coated up, and it's time to give it more of a rocky texture. So if I show you that there, you can sort of see that I've got lines coming up this one from the brush strokes, obviously, but this one's a lot more natural. This is just a simple matter of stippling it. So all I'm doing is I'm coming along, and just stippling away. I'm just going over the entire surface, and I'm looking for where I've got long lines, okay, that I can sort of break up. Anything that looks not like a rock, I can just come along and stipple. When it is wet and it's just been first applied, it can soften again, and you need another quick restipple. Best thing to do is just keep an eye on your pieces as they're drying, and if you spot something where it's slopped a little or doesn't look quite right, just go in, quick little stipple. Looks fine. Right, so I've got to crack on with giving this a bit of a stipple, and I'll bring it back when it's all been stippled up. And so, all stippled up and looking great. Right, my next job is I need to finish off this one. I want to put a very thin stipple on this one because I don't want to lose all those details we've pushed into it. Okay, and then we'll come back and we'll do the basing. So our pieces are dry enough now that we can actually do the texturing on the basing. Now normally I would do this with filler, okay, but as I'm playing with Artex and I've got none, we'll do it with Artex. Now as you can see on that one, it's come out rather well. All I'm basically doing is I've got some Artex on my brush and I'm just spreading it out in a thin coat over the base. Okay, now Artex will take a texture, which means after I've given this a coat, what I'll do is I'll give it a quick stipple as well. What that'll allow me to do is, if anywhere that the grit doesn't stick, for whatever reason, okay, Artex isn't a glue, so it'll only stick so much. It won't soak through and grip like PVA does. But if there are any patches where the grit doesn't stick, by stippling it, I'll make an artificial texture. And I know from personal experience doing my house that this stuff, when it's stippled, it's like concrete. So a quick stipple all over, just to make sure that we've got some sort of texture on it. The next thing I'm going to do is get a couple of little rocks. So we're talking those sort of things. I'm just going to sprinkle them a little bit around the base here. I could go with bigger, but bigger will need to be glued on. I don't really want to be gluing right now. So we'll just put a couple of rocks around here, just to add a bit of variation. A few in there. Throw those in. They'll be fine, don't worry. And then finally, we're getting a pinch, and there's no point pouring it over. You just need to sprinkle it over. Like I said, Artex won't soak up through it, so there's no point putting a thick layer on. It's only going to essentially stick what touches to it. So a thin layer will actually stick a lot better than a heavier layer. So very quickly. And a bit of a rough and ready one. But there you go, guys. All based up. So, I'll get these finished with these, and then once they're done, we'll come back, Okay guys, they're all dried up and they are looking rather nice. Now the Artex, it's worked really well for us and our grit has stuck down. It's not stuck brilliantly, to be perfectly honest, because it's not like PVA, it's not soaking up and sort of encapsulating everything. It's more a contact adhesive, so it's gripping it where it's making contact, which means we need to be a little bit gentle with our brushwork, but that's the next job. We're going to give this a base coat. The base coat will serve two purposes. One, it'll give it its base coat of colour, and second, yeah, it'll hold everything together, yeah, especially that grit. Now for my base coat, I'm using bog standard house paint. It's been watered down a little, probably a rate of 1 to 8, yeah, if I was to guesstimate, yeah, but just go so it's thin enough to brush on, but not too thin that it becomes too watery and sort of translucent. Now you can throw a little bit of PVA in here, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, and it will help things to bond. I'm not going to because I reckon I'll be all right with the paint anyway. So, out of the squeezy bottle, yeah, wet brush, and all it is genuinely a matter of doing is I'm going to start with the base, okay? The reason being is I can be most gentle on the base. Remember, things like PVA and I don't know specifically with Artex yet, yeah, but with PVA and filler, you can reactivate it when you put paint on it because it gets wet again. I don't know with Artex, so we're going to find out with that in a second, but yeah, I'm going gently on the base at the start just because I want to be careful because I'm not sure. Yeah, once the base is done and that grit's all stuck down, I know I'm doing a grey, we'll go over it with a brown afterwards, okay, but once it's all stuck down, then I can do the rest of it and I can be a bit more happy about it, you know what I mean? Yeah, so we'll find out if this stuff reactivates in about 5 minutes, I reckon. So I'll see you in a sec once I've got these base coated, guys. So our base coat has gone on our pieces and yeah, it's done a pretty good job of covering them over. Probably about 98% coverage. It's a real struggle to get a complete coverage when you're base coating, and generally don't worry about it. If there's the odd spot or a little bit drops off like I get on some of my bases, rocks falling off, don't worry about it. We'll cover these up in later stages. Yeah, there's plenty of opportunities to fix it yet. Now, looking at our pieces, they're looking quite good, but what I have noticed is that, as I said, the Artex hasn't done a brilliant job of hiding the polystyrene, okay? And so you can still tell if you look closely enough that it is bobbly polystyrene. But we can fix this, yeah? Plenty of opportunity to fix this, so don't worry, yeah? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to modify our painting technique. Now, you see, the reason I can tell when I look at this in certain places that it's bobbly polystyrene is because I can recognise it. So if I was to use dry brushing as a technique for painting these up, we would highlight the edges, you get darkness in the shadows, and we would reinforce the shape that we've got, and it would look like polystyrene. So instead, we're going to stipple it. Okay, now stippling is basically a technique using sponges and applying lots of different layers over time to build up a blended look of variation. Okay, so to stipple up, what I've got is, I've got some grey here, the base coat grey that I did them in, and I've got a tiny, tiny little blob of yellow. Yeah, there you go. Do you see it? Tiny. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix that blob of yellow in. Now, the reason I'm mixing this blob of yellow in with my grey is it will slightly change the colour just a tad, and it will take it away from that sort of grey monotone look, and it will move it into what we call, yeah, a more natural tone. Okay. Oh, pardon me. So, the actual technique for doing this is quite simple. I'm going to start off with my grey that I've just mixed a little bit of yellow into. And then what I've got here is I've got my light grey that I'm probably going to end up finishing with. And I'm slowly going to stipple this on. I'm going to add a little bit of grey, mix it in, stipple another layer. Yeah, so it's probably going to be better if we do this bit through photos. Yeah, so I'll show you first and then the progression we'll do via photos, guys. So, I get it on my sponge. This is sea sponge. Yeah, all ripped up. Spread it out so it's not so congealed up. And then it's just a simple matter of getting my piece. Don't worry if it goes over on edges and stuff like that, that's fine. Yeah, and it's just a matter of coming along and stippling it up. So if I bring that up, yeah, you can immediately see how it's starting to break it up. Obviously it's wet, so it's light, that'll go quite dark. But as we introduce them more grey, it'll go lighter and we'll get a far better effect. So this is Mel's time to crack on. So I'm going to crack on and you'll see the updates with the stippling in pictures, guys. So our stippling's done and it's improved it, but it's introduced a few other problems. And they're not to be unexpected problems. So if I bring them up, you can see how, by going in with that stippling, I've managed to break it up quite a lot. Now the key point when you're going in with your stippling is, every time you do a layer, obviously you line it, but you also reduce the amount of paint you're putting on. I tend to, without being too precise, I do this like 10% thing. So every layer is 10% less on. So when I get to the end, it's very, very speckled and mottled and, you know, it comes up quite interestingly. Okay. But once again, it hasn't hidden all the bobbles. It has certainly helped because it's changed that sort of look to it. So, you know, it's a little bit better, but it's still a very grey. Okay, which comes to the point where we need to start adding a few other colours, make it a little bit more natural. Now what I've got here is, I've got a slightly lighter brown than I used on the base. Okay, I'm using a dry brush and I'm using an overbrush technique, and all I'm going to do is, if you have a look on the base, you can see where I've gone over, yeah, as I've been stippling. I'm going to give this a quick dry brush, just to blend those in, and then once I've reached once on the paint I've reached a point where there's not much left on the brush, I'm going to start and I'm going to approach this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting it around here. Yeah, but I need to get to the stage where there's not much on. Okay, so it's more a smearing than an actual paint coat. Okay, so quick dry brush. Yeah, just blend those little bits of grey, get the majority of the paint off my brush again. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to be flocking it and doing other things to it. So just break up the blobs of grey that you've got on your base. And then once you've got the bulk of the paint off your brush, you can go in and you can start adding a little round the actual bases and stuff like that. Yeah, smearing it around. We'll put a wash on as well. Yeah, but this will all help just break it up. Good place for this is in the creases. Yeah, where dirt would gather. Yeah, but like I say, the key thing is avoid major paint splodges. So go in with a finger afterwards, give it a little bit of a rub. Yeah, and it should be fine. Yeah, and if I very quickly sort of give this a rough go, yeah, and then I show you the difference between one that's been done and one that hasn't. Yeah, that one has been done. Focus, damn you, focus. Yeah. And then that one hasn't. And that's a lot more stark grey, yeah? Just a little bit of brown changes everything with these things. So my job is I'm going to continue doing these bases, pushing brown into various little bits. And then I'm going to come along with a cream. I'm going to cream the bases and just give them a little bit more of a highlight, do exactly the same onto the rocks as well. And then we'll be ready to do some selective washing and flocking it. So, cracking on time, dry brushing time. See you in a minute. And so we've done all our stippling and we've done a little bit of dry brushing as well. First with a dark brown that we use for a base, and then for that light one, yeah, that's giving us our earth tone at the bottom, obviously, and it's made it quite nice and given us quite a nice rocky feature. Okay, now on the case of the polystyrene bits, yeah, oh, they're both polystyrene, but the expanded polystyrene, it's worked quite well. There are still some which are a little bit more obvious than the others, You're not going to get a perfect job with expanded polystyrene, but you can get a damn good one. Also, I am thinking filler will definitely work a bit better than Artex on these in the future. But this is about learning for me. Right, so the next job we need to do is I want to see if I can break them up a little bit more. And for those, we're going to do some washes. Now for the washes, what I've got is I've got a little bit of burnt umber acrylic and a little bit of sap green. I've got some water. Now there's three main ways you can do washes. You can shotgun it, which is basically watering down a brown or a colour and just applying it all over it, and wherever it falls is where you get the wash. You can come up with a proper wash, which is the watered down paint again, but it's added with a bit of flow aid, and that can either be professional flow aid or flow improver, or something like dish soap or jet dry or something like that. Just something to drop the water's surface tension. If you do that, the wash will flow into the creases a lot better. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a bit of an arty-farty technique, and we're going to do wet blending. Now, wet blending is dead simple. All it involves is 2 sets of water, your dirty water and your clean water, and your paint. You're also going to need 2 brushes for this. A big fat clean brush, okay, and a little brush. And what we're going to do is dead simple. I need to pull my chair up for this one. Yeah. If I do this one and I want to put some washes in and around in this dark area, what I do is dead simple. Yeah, is I get my water, just plain water, and I just brush it over the area I'm going to be washing. Okay, the reason I'm brushing the water in is if I wet it first, I'll be able to move the acrylic pigments around to where I want them. Yeah, rather than them staying in and getting stuck and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I get a little bit of brown, water it a little, come in and I do a couple of little dabs, just like that. Yeah? I can then clean off my brush, and what I can do is I can move that while it's all wet to where I need it to, so I can create darkness. Yeah? I can create my shadow, I can do my streaks. Yeah? All easy peasy. So my next job is with my browns and my little bit of green. I need to get dug into this. I need to get all these sort of things washed up, make them a little bit more interesting. Use the washes to hide that bobbly texture a bit. I'm going to be going for the greens around the bases and in the right crevices where you get a bit of moss growth. And we'll go for the browns just, where mud and dirt would gather. So, cracking on time. See you in a bit. Here's some photos. So that's our washing done, and it's worked a treat. And if I bring it up to the close camera, yeah, you can see there how it's gone nice and dark and green. You've got it in there, little splashes around here, and it's helped break everything up again. I need to work these cameras, don't I? Right, moving on to the flocking. So all our basic construction, texturing, painting and washing is done. It's time to flock things up. And I love flocking things up. So if we come down, as you can see, we've got our the stone monolith dedicated to Uranus, the Greek god Uranus. Right, okay, and what I've done is I've applied a watery coat of PVA. 50-50 water and PVA. It's good enough to hold on the flock, but it's watery enough that it'll soak through and make it grip really well. If you use raw PVA, you'll only get a contact sort of fix. Yeah, if you water it down a bit, it soaks through and you get a much better grip. And I've got 3 shades as usual. I've got my dark shade, my light shade, and my my normal blending mix. Okay, so what I'm going to do is spot technique, which is where you start off and you put little pinches, yeah, of your dark and your light. So I'm going to put the dark just around the base of my my monolith. Yeah, and a little bit around these little rocks here, because that's where it would be dark. It would get dark in the recesses, where it'd be a bit damp under the rocks and that sort of stuff. I'm trying to avoid applying too much because this is quite strong stuff. Yeah, and it can sort of overpower it, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And then next, I want to apply some light stuff. Now, only a little bit of light, but I'm going to put it in between the rocks just to line it up. And just like that. It's looking beautiful, isn't it? See? Yeah, and then a bit there. And obviously this would represent the more exposed grass where it's a little bit lighter. So, I'll show you there. Oh, yeah, it's already starting to bleed out. And next, all we need to do is just blend it with our green. Yeah, and the trick is to sprinkle enough on, yeah, that it doesn't actually cover the others, it just blends it in. Yeah, yes, I could just dunk it in there, but that'd be a bit of a shotgun technique, to be truthful. Yeah, and I'd lose my shading if I did that, so I'm not going to. That's it in there, on that edge. But you do end up with a little bit of a brown edge just around the edge. So what I do, yeah, is I do that. Which sorts that brown edge. And if I bring it up, yeah, it's a bit strong right now, to be perfectly honest, but I know from experience, I'll get it. I know from experience that once this dries and once we apply a wash, it's going to look beautiful. So that's my basic flocking. I'm going to do the flocking on the rest of these, and I'll come back when I've flocked them all up. Right, that's all our flocking done, guys, and it is time to start adding our terrain garnish. So if we take a quick look, yeah, as you can see, that's my flocking, and it's come out really nice. It won't look beautiful until we actually put the wash on. That's what happens with Jarvis flock. Once you wet it, it looks beautiful. But at the minute, it's already looking good. The next thing that we need to do is add a little bit more interest to our bases, which means we're going to add a bit of terrain garnish. Specifically, we're going to be going for a little bit of mixed clump foliage that I've got there, and some tufts that homemade tufts. You can buy your own, there's plenty of supplies out there. If you've got a flock box, you can make your own, which is what I do. If you're a Terrainiac, flock box is the way to go. Yeah. Now, applying this is dead simple. All I've done is I put a bit of neat PVA on that plate. Yeah, I'm going to grab a little bit of clump foliage, dip it in my PVA, so it's really messy, and just apply it. Yeah, a little bit over, I'll just fill that. That's all it is. Little dip, apply it, let it set. Once it's all done and once it's all set, we'll come back to actually seal it up. But in the meantime, I'm going to garnish these up, guys. So that's all our clump foliage and our tufts glued down, and they're looking rather nice. Next job is we need to seal this all in and add a little bit of extra garnish. Now for the extra garnish, what I've got is, I've got these. Now these are, what do you call it? It's just ground foam, yeah, a mixture of light, mid and dark. I think this was from Foreground. Yeah, but it's just ground foam. You apply it when you're sealing because you can't glue it individually. So when it's actually soaked with a bit of watered down PVA, or as I'm using, yeah, 1 part PVA, 3 parts water and a little bit of flow aid. Yeah, and all I'm going to do is give it a soaking, yeah, and then give it a sprinkling. So if I come along and we just point it in the right direction, Bosicle, for God's sake. And keeps pumping, yeah. Now given that a good soaking, it's time to add our little bit of garnish. Okay, and like I say, just a little bit of foam. And while it's soaked, before it all runs off, just sprinkle a little bit on. Yeah, the foam will automatically soak up the watered down PVA and it will adhere itself. Yeah, so you don't really need to worry about pushing it down or anything like that. Yeah, if you're really concerned, once it's dry, you can give it another coat of watered down PVA and it'll be fine. But if I bring it up very quickly, yeah, you can see, once it focuses, how that garnish works. Right then, I'm going to crack on garnishing these, and I'll see you soon. So with the sealing done, that's them all done, and they are looking beautiful. Now, quick couple of caveats. Obviously, I've struggled a little bit with the expanded polystyrene here, mainly because I was trying out Artex as a covering. The Artex is a lot tougher than my general filler, but it doesn't have the volume to hide the bobbly bits. So, I'm in a bit of a quandary. I think if I was to do it again, I'd probably fill the bobbly bits a bit more with filler and then use the Artex. But that's me going overboard as usual, guys, yeah. Either way, yeah, please take this as an example of, look, you can do it with expanded polystyrene and get great results. And you can also do it, yeah, with your high density stuff and get beautiful results. And if I move these across and we go to the close-up camera, yeah, look at that. Look at the basin. It's turned out beautiful. Now, obviously, I've only done I started off with 4, we've done 5. You can do as many as you want. Yeah, they're modular henges at the end of the day. I've shown you all the techniques. We've talked about working with the different types of foams, texturing them, sealing them. We've covered a stippling, paint technique, which is really more realistic. Okay, on top of that, we've looked at our wet blending, our posh washing, and that's come out beautiful. So even though these are expanded polystyrene, they've come out really nice. Okay, whole load of tips there for you. And as I said, this is the start of I think this is the Dark Age series, but you'll probably know better than me from the title once I get this nailed down. But overall, I'm really pleased. And on a personal note, sorry this video, the technical angles have been a little bit iffy and that sort of stuff. Getting back into filming, you know what I mean? Regulars will know what I mean, but I'm back in the studio, I'm back filming, I've got a big smile on my face, so thank you guys. And if you have enjoyed this, as always, yeah, like it, share it. If you've got any questions in the comments, guys, I'm here to help, you know what I mean? Yeah, and then finally, if you really do like it, remember, there's always the Patreon, the PayPal. Please consider supporting me, guys. It does help. It keeps the lights on, the cameras rolling, and it gets me in this studio making these tutorials for you. So links will appear on the screen, and in the meantime, guys, I'm glad to be back. Yeah, I'll see you soon with more tutorials. All the best, yeah? Ta-da.